Okay, good morning, good afternoon again, and welcome to today's webinar from Planet Retail R&G on the household and pet care sector. I'm David Gordon. I'm a business director here at Planet Retail, based in our London office, and I'm joined today by Flo Wright, our retail analyst, also based in our London office. And today, for the next 30 minutes or so, we're going to take you through a quick overview of the household and pet care sector, looking at some of the recent findings and some of the recent developments that we've seen, some of the trends and retailer and manufacturer initiatives that we have covered over the last sort of 4, 5, 6 months. And assuming all is well in terms of time, then we'll do a little bit of Q&A as well towards the end. So household and pet care is part of a series of reports and coverage that we provide through our Planet Retail R&G service here. Typically, we're looking at 4 sectors. You may well know us for our sort of channel and our strategy work, but we also look very carefully at CPG sectors. Our 4 sectors are here on the screen: health and beauty, household care and pet care, consumer electronics, and food and beverages. So on a regular basis, we are scanning the market, looking at what retailers and manufacturers are doing in each of these sectors, looking at how the landscape's evolving, and talking about initiatives and best practice for the future. We're just releasing a food and beverages sector report this month. Next month, we'll release our next household care and pet care sector report, so do look out for that. Typically, we're looking to provide updates on a rotational basis every 4 months across these sectors. Hopefully, we will provide that information to you as and when it's ready. But for today, we have a 4-part agenda. We'll look at the sector, very quick overview, and also look at the drivers of change. And then the main part of today's webinar will be really looking at the initiatives, those manufacturer and retailer developments that we have tracked and viewed over the last 6 months. We will talk about them in terms of our 4 winning strategies. So we'll look at the developments within e-commerce and ecosystems, within supply chain and fulfillment, store of the future, and also shopper engagement and retention. We'll then sort of round that up, and all being well, we'll take a little bit of Q&A. So do drop in your questions as we are going through the webinar. So to begin with, let me provide a brief overview by firstly looking at some of our macro data. And this is consumer spending data by region. And really 3 things to pull out here. I think firstly, in terms of household and pet care expenditure, there's 3 main markets globally: Asia, as you can see there, North America, and Europe. And I think probably the interesting thing looking at this data is clearly the growth potential of the Asian market. And I think this is perhaps no surprise to those of you watching and listening, because in terms of global trends, then we're familiar with the modernization of the retail markets in Asia. We're familiar with the urbanization and the population growth in Asia. So to see a sort of compound annual growth rate there of 8.8% over the next 5 years, then I think that is probably well understood. But in terms of the more traditional or Western economies, as we have been focused on in recent decades, and still important, still growing. Western Europe, almost 5% compound annual growth. North America, likewise, almost 5% going forward to 2022. But really, given the higher growth rates coming through in Asia, then proportionately they will be taking a smaller share of the global household and pet care market going forward. So that may influence a few investment decisions going forward. So having looked at consumer expenditure, let's just take a quick look at some of the major retailers operating in this sector. And in terms of household and pet care, clearly a lot of the sales volume goes through the major grocers. So on the left-hand side there, we've got a chart showing the major sort of global grocers there, from Walmart through to Ahold. Mostly big box grocers there, as you'd expect, operating in the hypermarket, superstore sector. A couple of discount operators in there as well. But on the right-hand side, we've got pet care specialists as well. Typically smaller. If you look at the sales on the sales axis, much smaller clearly than the global grocers, but in some ways a little bit more developed in terms of their business model, because when you look at the red elements of each bar there, that shows the online sales going through these retailers such as PetSmart, Petco, and so on. And what we're seeing is actually those pet care specialists have I guess, are playing to a market where there is a greater consumer willingness to shop online, and those pet care specialists are getting behind that trend. And you can see the sales potential that will come through those retailers in the future. Now, I raise online because online is very much part of our retail landscape going forward. And when we think about the drivers of change, then online and technology more generally is going to be a significant driver of change. I just want to spend just a few minutes thinking about the household and pet care sector and the sorts of change drivers that may influence what this sector looks like in the future. Now, to do this, we typically operate or use a framework that we call STEEP. So Society, Technology, Economy, Industry and Policy, STEIP. And we look at the future landscape, we look at all the trends and developments through a lens of STEEP. And we try and understand how the future is going to look through this lens. And that allows us to make more informed decisions in terms of retailers and manufacturers and the types of strategic investments that they should be making right now to plan for the future. So taking a look at some of these factors, if we pick up on society to begin with, and I'll only look at 2 or 3 of these elements, but I think society is quite an interesting one. A couple of charts there on the left-hand side. What we see is the average number of people per household is declining, and yet on the bottom chart there, the urbanization that we're seeing across many economies is actually increasing. And that's leading to a consumer trend where shoppers are looking for smaller basket sizes, they're shopping smaller basket sizes, they're shopping more frequently, and typically favoring more proximity outlets in that respect. And I think the image there of a Carrefour Express just gives an illustration there as to the type of store that is actually becoming more favorable amongst shoppers. Now, that's a significant shift. The declining household size and the rising urbanization is and the move towards proximity retail is significant for household and pet care for a couple of reasons. Firstly, the smaller basket sizes, shopping in proximity locations means there's perhaps an increasing willingness of shoppers to buy their bulkier, heavier items online. And secondly, the move towards smaller proximity formats means that hypermarkets are under pressure. It's well documented. And they are thinking out in terms of formats, in terms of space alignment, in terms of range assortment. They are rethinking really what a hypermarket needs to be and what it needs to offer. And on both of those counts, the household and pet care sectors are being influenced in terms of what the future may look like. Now, technology is also an influence for this sector in particular. The paths to purchase, as we tend to call them, are being influenced by new technologies such as voice, mobile, clearly, auto replenishment. And for regular, easily replenishable, very convenient type items, perhaps where there's a low emotional attachment, then increasingly the tendency or the temptation for shoppers will be to purchase through these automated sort of paths to purchase. And that will be a challenge, I think, for some suppliers within the household and pet care sector if you're not part of that automated replenishment cycle. So the challenge will be there to sort of disrupt the shopper basket, to disrupt the pattern of behavior, which will allow shoppers to then purchase into different brands when patterns and behaviors are so well entrenched. So interesting developments there in technology in terms of the changing route to market and the increasing options that the shopper has in terms of path to purchase and how that may influence household and pet care going forward. And gradually, as these trends take hold, we're seeing a gradual shift to online. And as I said slightly earlier, a gradual change in the way hypermarkets are setting themselves out to offer a shopper proposition. And just some data here on the left-hand side that shows a range of categories and how they've become influenced and impacted by the gradual movement online. So for categories like toys and office supplies, consumer electronics, baby, books, they increasingly, the share of trade online is growing and at growth rates that are certainly double digit and driving a relatively high level of change. So lots of change underway that may certainly influence the household sector within grocery. Grocery remains reasonably insulated at the moment, but trends suggest that is changing. Pet food, pet care already has a 10% share online and growing in double digits. So, that is already underway. And the illustration, the image just on the right-hand side shows a very new Carrefour hypermarket in Poland, Warsaw. And it's a smaller hypermarket format, quite a drastically reduced range assortment available there. But the interesting thing is the screens there, the interactive digital screens that allow shoppers as they're walking the store to actually purchase up to 16,500 products online. So Carrefour, they're very much encouraging in a smaller shopping environment, the opportunity for shoppers to go online and get their goods delivered to home or indeed collected in the store later. So many initiatives there, changing the way that people are viewing categories and household and pet care. And what we want to do now is just take a little sort of look through some of those initiatives that retailers are bringing into the marketplace, and also look at how manufacturers are developing some of their propositions for the future landscape. And we'll do this in that structure I mentioned earlier of our winning strategies. So in terms of managing for the future and preparing for the future landscape, we talk about 4 winning strategies that manufacturers and retailers should be looking to embrace in terms of setting themselves up for future success. So we talk about e-commerce and ecosystem management. We talk about stores of the future, supply chain and fulfillment. So how will businesses get products to customers in new ways? And we talk about engagement and retention. So how will shoppers be influenced and how will they be communicated in the future? So we're going to skip through these 4 areas, and I'm going to pass over now to Flo to talk about e-commerce and digital ecosystem management and store of the future.
Thanks, David. So in relation to e-commerce and digital ecosystem management, we've seen retailers developing a number of different initiatives looking to support emerging digital shopper journeys. And we can think about these initiatives in 3 key themes. So the first key theme that we've been seeing is acquisitions of online experts from the likes of bricks and mortar operators such as PetSmart over in the US, as well as Chuck and Don's. The second key theme is around retailers expanding their online offering through mobile apps such as Philips Pet Food. And the third key theme has been a shift more towards automation, and that's particularly in relation to some of the more bulky household purchasing. And Box.com is a good example of this. And we've also seen Amazon driving automation through the implementation of their dash buttons. And one of those is a virtual dash button, which they launched in France earlier this year. And we can look at that in a bit more detail. So this is Amazon's virtual dash buttons, which were launched in France in April. And they basically allow Amazon Prime members to buy their products with one-click actions. So buttons are available across lots of different household and pet care brands, from Finish, Pampers, Ariel and Iams. And when a customer buys a product suitable for auto replenishment, a virtual dash button is automatically created on their online account, and they simply have to click on that button to replenish the product. And that's all shipped via the Amazon Prime service. So this is a good example of a retailer really driving the automation of household purchasing and trying to ease a shopper pain point by using the online channel. And we thought it would be useful as well to bring in an example of a retailer who has acquired an online specialist, because this is something that retailers in the sector are doing quite a bit at the moment in order to try and capture some of the growing opportunities that we're seeing in online. So this is a good example here. It's PetSmart, which is the largest global pet specialist, and it's predominantly a bricks and mortar operator. And it acquired Chewy.com last year, which is a really dominant online operator offering lots of pet food, pet products, and it also offers some innovative auto ship fulfillment models as well. So PetSmart acquired Chewy.com, and I think this is a good example of a retailer really thinking about the long-term strategy and safeguarding itself against the rise of online experts within the sector. And as well, from a supplier perspective, we can think about these kind of partnerships and acquisitions as a way for suppliers to try and expand their presence across different online platforms, and also to try and develop more holistic, integrated, multi-channel propositions as well. So this is something that we can probably expect to see happening quite a bit more in the sector as time goes on. So we've talked through a couple of retailer examples in the e-commerce space. And obviously from a supplier perspective as well, the rise of e-commerce has a lot of implications, and they need to think about how they can capture some of the opportunities in online. And one of the ways that suppliers will need to rethink the way that they plan their strategies is through packaging for online. So increasingly within the household and pet care sector, we're seeing suppliers having more than one packaging design for the same product to complement different channels. So this is an example of household products brand Clorox, which recently redesigned its product packaging to make it more suitable to online shipping. And this was actually off the back of some poor online shopping's ratings due to products being damaged during transport. So Clorox redesigned the bottle to make it completely sealed. It also placed the trigger in a box rather than being pre-attached to the bottle, which is the way that it's merchandised in store. And as a result of this, Clorox was able to enhance its customer ratings and ultimately improve its bottom line due to fewer returned items. So wrapping up the e-commerce strategy then, as we're seeing traditional centre store household and pet care categories come under growing pressure in store, there's clearly been a lot of emphasis from different players, retailers and manufacturers within the sector to really drive their e-commerce and omnichannel propositions and to safeguard businesses for the future. So moving on then to look at Store of the Future, which is our second winning strategy. And as we've already seen, the rise of e-commerce across the household and pet care sector is really putting pressure on specialists and as well on grocery retailers in terms of the future role of the store. And here at Planet Retail R&G, we've got a four-pillared framework which outlines how stores are being repurposed and redesigned to adapt to the digital age. And retailers are already doing a lot of things in this area, and they will continue to do this. And there's four key ways that they will do this. So firstly, through turning stores into spaces of entertainment and experience. Secondly, by making the shopper experience frictionless through digital integration. Thirdly, by implementing new and innovative ranges through product curation. And finally, by promoting the store as more of a social space in which customers can dwell. And for the household and pet care sector in particular, we're seeing a number of retail initiatives across this space. There are a couple of key themes that we wanted to pick out on this slide. So the first is around curation. So you can see some retailers really looking to drive new and innovative product ranges, particularly in relation to natural and eco-friendly consumer trends. So, for example, Tesco in the UK and Maya over in the US have both developed curated ranges. And the second key focus for stores has been around experience. So retailers and specialists in the sector are increasingly looking to offer more service-oriented propositions to drive customers into store. So PetSmart has launched a grooming service as a standalone and in-store proposition over in the US, and Walmart as well has also partnered with pet clinics to integrate them into their stores. And this is really a way in which pet specialists and household specialists can drive consumers into store as well. And we can look at this Walmart example in a bit more detail. So Walmart's the US's largest grocery operator, and it partnered with PetIQ, which is a health and wellness pet company. It partnered back in March this year, and they're looking to introduce 20 VetIQ pet care clinics in Walmart locations. So you can see this as part of a strategy by Walmart to start to use some of its big box space in a more productive way. And this is actually an expansion of Walmart's partnership with PetIQ, whose products it's been stocking in its stores for many years. PetIQ has wider plans as well to open 1,000 additional clinics with retail partners by 2023. So this really highlights what we could see in the future for pet stores in particular, in terms of the more holistic service-oriented propositions they could offer. And in turn as well for suppliers, this could open up new opportunities for them to try and merchandise their products adjacent to or even within the clinics. And as retailers look to try and drive shoppers into their physical stores, there are clearly some opportunities for suppliers as well to work closely with them on range curation and product display. And this is a really good example of a supplier doing that. So P&G partnered with Walgreens, which is the leading drugstore operator in the US, for the 3rd year running on its Healthy Home program. The scheme features displays of Procter & Gamble brands such as Bounty, Swiffer and Charmin on the gondola end. And these products are all marketed under the slogan "Restock Everyday Essentials." And the move is part of a broader approach really by P&G to try and make the shopping trip easier for its customers. So in this particular instance, we're seeing them driving more of a convenient mission-focused approach within a drugstore as opposed to a hypermarket. And off the back of this campaign, P&G saw an 147% jump in sales year on year of its everyday products at Walgreens. So clearly then, the store can still be seen as a really vital touch point for household and pet care retailers and suppliers. And we're seeing a number of different initiatives in this space looking towards driving customers into store. So that is e-commerce and digital ecosystem management and store of the future. So now I'm going to pass you on to David to look into supply chain and fulfillment.
Yeah, thanks, Flo. So supply chain and fulfillment, so our third winning strategy. So let's take a quick look at what household and pet care retailers and suppliers have been doing in this particular strategic area. And the first thing to say is actually it's been quite a busy area for household and pet care retailers and suppliers. Quite a lot going on around supply chain and fulfillment, perhaps not surprisingly aligned to much of the e-commerce and digital ecosystem activity. But 3 main themes and several examples on the screen there for you. But the 3 main themes I would call out would be firstly rapid fulfillment. So retailers looking to get products to consumers very quickly, same day fulfillment, if not faster. And examples there from PetSmart and Cryas that we'll look at in a second. The second main theme that I've seen in this area is I guess an increasing sophistication around shopper replenishment models, that auto replenishment that I was talking about earlier. Really coming through with a couple of examples there from Ahold and Target that we'll talk about shortly. And thirdly, in terms of the main theme around supply chain and fulfillment, really transparency across that supply chain and looking particularly at product ingredient visibility. Walmart and M&S both active on that count. So very quickly, let's just have a quick look at some of those initiatives. I said in terms of rapid fulfillment is increasing, and PetSmart in recent months have gone big on this and partnering here with Deliv, the sort of intermediary fulfillment partnership. that operates across the US. Now, intermediaries, I think, have really sort of taken rapid fulfillment on in the US, perhaps far more than any other global region. So we see the likes of Aldi, for example, partnering with Instacart. We see Lidl and Target partnering with Shipt. But PetSmart here have partnered here with Deliv, and PetSmart started offering same-day delivery in 2016, but this initiative recently has seen a massive rollout to many, many more markets in the US, offering much greater scale in terms of the number of shoppers, number of consumers that this type of rapid fulfillment service can reach. So speed of fulfillment, the key battleground right now in retailing, and PetSmart are pushing hard on that. Secondly, I said that there's an increasing sophistication around sort of auto replenishment models, and this is an example from Ahold, their subsidiary, their online e-commerce subsidiary, bol.com, based in the Netherlands and Belgium. And this is quite a nice initiative, focused very much on household products, and this is for regular repeat products, so appealing to shoppers who need these products on a regular basis and want their life to be easier, simpler, more convenient. So bol.com has set up an initiative here that allows products to be ordered on a regular cycle. The frequency can be determined by the shopper. The products within the combination can be determined by the shopper, but the more products combined creates a bigger discount. And really, it's quite a nice way for shoppers to receive these products that perhaps they are very, very regular purchasers of. Now, as I said earlier, the challenge here is for brands that are not part of this regular replenishment cycle to actually disrupt that pattern, to disrupt that behavior, and become part of this auto replenishment cycle. But I would call this out as an initiative that we're likely to see a lot more of. And very much it resembles sort of what Target are doing with its restock activity, perhaps what Amazon are doing with its pantry initiative. So this is a type of progress, a type of initiative that I'd expect to see much more of going forward. And finally, from a manufacturer perspective, I just wanted to call out, I guess, the opportunities or the challenges around D2C, direct to consumer. And this is a new startup in the UK that's entered the laundry market, the laundry capsule market, a business called Smol, SMOL. And this is about D2C laundry capsules, ordered via a website, very low overheads in that respect, complete flexibility on the volume and the frequency of delivery to the customer. And again, it's a startup, perhaps in the same way that Dollar Shave Club was a startup many years ago, but it shows the potential for more ventures of this type to come into the market as the market fragments, as more options through D2C become available. Don't expect categories to become disrupted potentially by startup ventures of this type. There seems to be an increasing willingness of shoppers to adapt to this type of model. So again, a watch out for the sector, for retailers and manufacturers in terms of potential disruption to come as more of these ventures move along. So looking at, we'll skip on now to our fourth and final sort of winning strategy. So back to Flo for shopper engagement and retention.
Thanks, David. So yeah, back to the final winning strategy now, which is shopper engagement and retention. And we've really seen a number of different retailer initiatives within the sector trying to enhance communication and engagement with customers as their path to purchase is increasingly complex. And again, we've got three key themes here. So the first theme is around retailers trying to develop more personalized schemes and programs. Amazon there in the middle is a really good example of this. So Amazon have launched a pet profile section as part of their Amazon Prime offering, and customers can enter their pet's information here to try and automate their pet product purchasing, as well as accessing relevant, specific targeted product offers. So the second key theme is around the rise of subscription services, and this is trying to ease a shopper pain point around repeat purchasing in household and pet categories. So Petco in the US has launched Pupbox, which is a subscription service. And the final key theme that we've seen is more of an engagement through in-store touchpoints, such as sampling. And we can see this happening in Sam's Club, which is Walmart's wholesale retailer. So sampling is a really good way to drive trial, often used in new product launches outside of the sector as well, but perhaps it has even more relevance to the household and pet care sector, given that, as we've already spoken about, auto replenishment models have become a very popular way to try and drive repeat purchasing of one particular brand or range. So we could maybe see sampling as a way to disrupt competitor auto replenishment models and try and drive trial of new or exciting brands. And I guess the other added benefit of sampling, particularly in store, is driving engagement in store through customers. So this is an initiative here that we've got on the page of Sam's Club, and it's hosting a network of interactive kiosks that automatically distribute product samples to customers. And at the same time as doing this, they're gathering shopper data, which is a really interesting add-in. So when customers sample a particular product, Sam's Club have visibility into the shoppers who purchased that product, as well as their intentions for converting that into a purchase. They're called Friosk samples, sample dispensing kiosks, and they're also equipped with a digital screen that runs particular advertisements promoting the products that are being sampled. So you can see here that Lemmy Shine detergent was being trialled back in April, but the brands are typically swapped out weekly. So obviously there's clear opportunities for different suppliers to engage in this type of retailer collaboration. So moving on to a supplier example then. So as well as seeing retailers engaging shoppers through different types of touch points, we're also seeing suppliers using different strategies as well to do so. So this is a good initiative by Procter & Gamble, and they've got an online community called P&G Everyday. And Procter & Gamble sent an email to members of their P&G Everyday online community to test a line of new natural cleaning products from its Homemade Simple lifestyle brand. So the new product line included things like dish soap, fabric refresher, and laundry detergents, which were free from dyes and perfumes. And though customers couldn't actually buy the SKUs on this site, the website contained a button which linked to a page that allowed shoppers to try and rate their interest in those products and talk about whether or not they would be inclined to buy those products. So what we can say about this is that whilst it's not directly translating into sales for P&G, the online community can clearly be seen as a real commercial asset who routinely use it to try and carry out research and provide insightful feedback on new ranges and promotions. So we've gone through all of the 4 different winning strategies now, and we thought it would be useful just to wrap up and talk about where most of the focus we've seen from the retailers and suppliers in the sector. And what we can see is that there's clearly been a real diverse range of initiatives from both suppliers and retailers in the sector over the past few months. But as the clear kind of overarching trend that we're seeing is that sales are shifting online and store space is being repurposed, which is squeezing household and pet care categories in store, probably more than other categories given their relatively low emotional attachment. So it's perhaps not surprising then that for retailers and manufacturers in the sector, the key focus has really been on developing their e-commerce and digital ecosystems. And this is really aimed towards capturing some of the growing online opportunities in this channel. But obviously, as this happens, supply chains and fulfillment operations will also have to advance, and we've seen that in new methods such as auto replenishment, as well as direct-to-consumer models, and new ways of engaging shoppers as well through mechanisms such as in-store sampling. I think the final point it's worth noting is that clearly from the range of in-store initiatives we've seen today, particularly tailored more towards service-oriented propositions, they really highlight that although e-commerce is dominant focus at the moment, the future store will still remain important in the sector, but just in new and innovative ways. So with that, we will wrap up today's presentation. I think we've got a few minutes now to answer any questions that we might have.
Yeah, thanks, Flo. So we've had a couple of questions come in. I will make these pretty quick. So I mentioned at the start of the webinar that actually going forward, Asia shows the highest sort of growth potential in terms of sort of annual growth rates. I mean, from a sort of supplier perspective, or what type of opportunity is happening in Asia? Where can suppliers really kind of, get involved and take the opportunity there?
Yeah, so Asia's a really interesting region, and we're seeing growth more widely in other sectors as well in Asia, and that's really being driven by online players, so the likes of Alibaba. So from a supplier perspective, there are lots of opportunities for suppliers to try and get their products onto some of these leading players' platforms. So for example, Alibaba's Tmall platform in China, and we're already seeing that actually happening. So a good example of that for the sector is Lucky Vitamin, which is a US wellness business. They sell pet care goods. And they're really working with Alibaba to launch their products onto a platform, onto the Tmall platform. And they're also working with Alibaba to try and utilize expertise in terms of targeting shoppers, as well as doing greater granularity of data analysis through Alibaba as well. So yeah, I think the key way for suppliers and businesses to leverage the growth of Asia is really working towards getting some of their products onto these growth players channels.
Okay, and I guess maybe building on that and looking at the slide that we've left up there on view. I mean, making the most of the opportunity in Asia, it appears to involve getting involved in e-commerce and digital ecosystem management. I mean, we've kind of suggested that that's been the major area of focus for many retailers and manufacturers over the last sort of 6 to 9 months. How do you see it going forward in terms of this sort of areas of focus going forward across those winning strategies that we spoke of? Still more to come on e-commerce, I'd expect.
Yeah, absolutely. I think given the rate of expansion that we're predicting to see, so double-digit growth with grocery and pet care as well for e-commerce over the next 5 years, it is going to remain a real key focus point for both retailers and manufacturers as well. So we would expect to see a lot more investment in digital strategies. So things like more acquisitions and partnerships, as we showed with the likes of PetSmart in the US acquiring the online business, as well as reinvention of omni-channel opportunities. So trying to integrate the online and offline platforms in a better way. And I think as well as that, we can start to see the emergence or the growing of new types of replenishment and fulfillment schemes. So the direct-to-consumer models that we saw earlier, and yeah, direct-to-consumer websites as well from suppliers. So really leveraging the opportunities that the online channel will provide in terms of the growth of consumer touch points.
Okay, well, good answer, Flo. Thank you for that. And I think that's a nice way to sort of conclude today's session. Looking at time, we're almost out of time. So our next report, as I said at the beginning, is going to be coming out at the end of August. So we are scanning the market for household and pet care initiatives, looking at how the future is going to unveil itself. And we'll be sharing those with you towards the end of August. So look out for communication on those. As for today's webinar, that will be made available to you very shortly, as will the slides that we've used today. So it just leaves me to say thank you once again for dialing in and for listening. And we will hopefully hear from each other shortly. Many thanks.